Hey, Hound Dogs, I'm Julia Canon, and here we have today Kevin Krust as one of our. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I
How's it
haven't
going?
done. Sorry, I'm gonna be honest, I haven't done a podcast in a minute, but here we have Kevin Krust, one of our special guests.
How's it going, everybody?
Hi, and it's actually been a hot minute since you've been with us since our last podcast, right? It'll be
Yeah,
like
it's been
almost a year.
when was the last time we did? I'm trying to remember when was that? It was it was over a year ago at this point,
Yeah,
wouldn't it have been?
yeah, it was about a year ago. I believe you were the one that pitched the idea because you wanted to ask David, Paul, and Trevor some questions.
Yeah. I'm very interested in the comic public, just the process of comic creation
Hmm.
in the just in general as a storytelling medium. Comic books are just they're very powerful, and it's a very explored but also unexplored medium right now because I feel like it's an industry that's very much like the people who are in it are really in it,
Hmm.
and then it's struggling to get a lot of new traction, and so I feel like there's a lot of window for growth right now
Yeah,
in
for sure.
comics, and so it's something I'm definitely like really interested in learning more about. And yeah, no, the comics super fun, so it's definitely something where it's like I was like these guys just seem like great people to talk to for this.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad you came to us, like, just to gain some knowledge for that. And, like, I
Yeah.
guess, like, since we have the ball rolling with it, when you were talking about, like, making your own comic, have you made any progress with that since the last time we talked about it?
So yeah, so the comic is part of a bigger kind of multimedia project that I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tie-in as part of a larger like it's a serial thing that I'm developing right now. My production company, Dead Media Entertainment, is we are we're working towards writing and shooting a pilot for the first part of the live action serial, which will then eventually build into a couple other things, including the comic, which is what we're looking at. So it's making really good progress. The whole arc of what will become the comic is plotted and how that will kind of fit into everything else. So that's it's been making some very good progress.
Okay.
But we're nowhere near illustration yet. It's loosely the script has a loose treatment, but that's about as far as it's come at this point.
Gotcha. And do you have, like, a bit of, like, a hook or at least, like, a small little summary of, like, what the series will be about?
So I don't want to say too much right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking to a couple of distributors and we're working with a few different people. So it's something I can't talk too much about, but it is
Mm-hmm.
something that is in active development and we are hoping for a 2027 kind of 2028 aiming date
Got you.
for everything. So.
Okay. All right. So, like, with talking with comic books and stuff, like, I would like, have you always, like, saw yourself at least in this type of sphere, like, whenever, like, you were growing up and, like, looking into work and stuff for your future?
So, comics are definitely something I've always had an interest in. I've been reading comics since I was 4 or 5 years old. Pretty much, if I could read books or read comics, I was choosing to read comics.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, and so I've grown up around them. I used to draw when I was very young, when I was in like elementary school. I used to draw little comics and sell them to kids I went to school with. So it was kind of something I've always had like an interest in, but it was never something I've always been more in the film audio vein.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was one of those things where like those I was like, oh, this will be my job, but like comics are fun. And I never really thought the possibility of it being something I could do in any kind of a real capacity as something feasible, and it's become more and more so as time has gone on. So it's definitely something I've had an interest in, and I'm glad I get to kind of explore it a bit now.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to, like, when we're figuring out a future as kids, it's kind of funny how, like, a lot of stuff we either did or didn't see ourselves in the future. It's like it either ages
Yeah,
well or it ages like like milk, and it's just kind of funny
like milk,
sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
no, comics are wonderful. Like the thing I think that's so amazing about comic books is especially depending on the type of stuff that you're writing, it can reach people at so many different places in their life. Like you see that a lot with a lot of the big published stuff with
Hmm.
Marvel, DC, and Black Horse and or Dark Horse and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And so it's but like you also see that a lot with indie comics, like with Power Squared and everything.
Hmm.
You see there's so many human elements and there's such an interesting way of kind of putting people in very kind of extreme situations and pushing theme and message, and so it's such a cool medium.
Hmm. And, like, since you did mention Power Squared, like, did you ever, like, get into reading it, like, over the year? after
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Before I was on last time, I did read a couple of the early story, and then before this one, I was able to check out some of the more recent stuff.
Oh,
It's
nice.
very cool to see how the art has kind of evolved as you guys
Mm-hmm.
have like continued to go on. Because I know it started with a different artist, didn't it? And then
Yeah. Like
so
so.
are you doing all of the art now, or
Not
how does that work?
not me. So, I believe like there was one artist. I'm sorry, I can't remember their name for the life of me. If like for the very first artist, I deeply apologize. And then it was the artist Rachel Wells, who I believe they started after 5 or 6. And
Hmm.
then I started doing it around issue 24 and 25 when Rachel
Yeah.
stepped down. And then we actually have another artist in our arsenal right now, Jen Moreno.
Okay.
Their art has yet to be released yet because like I believe we're just starting to release issue 25. But yeah,
Hmm.
so currently the series does has had like 3 artists throughout its time.
That's awesome. I mean, it's just it's cool, especially like when you look at especially when you look at any kind of comic, but especially with Power Squared, it's very
Mhm.
cool to see that evolution.
Mhm.
But it's with any kind of a comic, especially when you start to look at it in a more condensed format, where you're looking at looking at things back to back to back to back. Like
Mhm.
it's cool to see how that evolution changes
Yeah.
when you're as you're reading it and how it impacts the way you kind of consume the story and all that.
Yeah. And when you're reading it, like, do you have like a favorite character, or like a favorite like I guess like part of the story you liked out of everything?
I don't know. I mean, I love the guys. Like they're so fun. Like
Yeah.
they're just so fun. And like it's I don't know. It's I would probably say like the two of them have so much fun chemistry and so many fun interactions, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's so hard to where it's like, yeah, I think yeah, I like the guys a lot.
Yeah,
They're
cuz
very fun.
I feel like
They really
yeah.
have like the fun. They have just it's the dynamic between the two. It stands out in such a unique way, especially because they're twins. So it's
Yeah.
like it's such a fun
Yeah.
thing.
I also find it funny just because like whenever you see comics and stuff, like I understand there's like a lot of like comics that are like set in like university and stuff, but like I feel like you can like delve in a lot more in like adventures in comedy like in university than like you would say like I guess like when 'cause I feel like a lot of comics they always delve into like the high school aspect. So seeing like
Yeah,
comics that are like
the
college
college
and
time is
yeah.
definitely very unexplored.
Yeah. So like I think it's also just because like we're adults we kind of see the humor in like university as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see. But yeah, I'm glad that you like the comic book. That's really nice to say here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No,
So
it's great.
yeah, and like so like with us, like with Power Squared, it's basically like it's our own IP. So it's our own IP, and I understand like you're also in the process of creating like your own IP when it comes to like
Yeah,
your
we're
story and anything. Now with you, like you talked a little bit about it before the end of the podcast. It's like you delve into like content creation and also like just like creating content through like different IPs. I've seen like with
yeah.
the Ben 10 cipher, and you're also currently working on a Danny Phantom cipher, correct?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Which
Yeah,
that's been in production for a very long time now, but yes, yes it is.
yeah.
It is still coming. It's still on the way.
No,
So,
we're looking forward to it. So, like, would you say like like with creating your own content with different IPs, would you say like there is like different hurdles from creating content with an IP that already exists between like just creating something from scratch?
yes, absolutely. I mean, anytime you're doing an adaptation versus whether it's an adaptation or it's inspired by or whatever, I think that's one of the things that is that you see a large range of depending on the creators who are doing stuff. So like when I work with a lot of different creators who mix original content with intellectual property. And one of the things that's interesting about that is everybody kind of has a different angle for it. When I try to do stuff for me, for my personal brand, like with the Ben 10 cipher or like what we're doing with the Danny Phantom rap cipher, is I want to create something that the creators wouldn't be embarrassed to promote or to share or to be like, I wanted to capture the spirit and the like kind of the boundaries that these series kind of set for themselves. Like, with Pokemon characters, you'd never see them like curse or they never do anything super over the top violent. Like they border that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, but not always.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, I try to kind of maintain whatever boundaries and are set by the IP. And so that introduces its own challenges. There's its own, they all have their own visual languages, they all have their own way of storytelling. And so I always try to make sure that I understand what the intention of the pieces were or of the series were before I riff off of it so that I can make sure I'm capturing that properly.
Also,
But
it's
then
like
other
delving into it's like basically looking at the Bible and see where you can go before you cross, but not
Yeah,
like try to
I
safely
try to
cross
reverse
without.
engineer the pitch Bibles a little bit
Mm-hmm.
in a way. The with a lot of other creators I work with though, like that's not the case. Like
Mm-hmm.
one of my most frequent collaborators, Cam Steady, he does a lot more, there's a lot more language and there's typically things like that. And we handle it in a very respectable way, so it's not approaching on things like Pokemon or Nintendo or Yu-Gi-Oh or any
Mm-hmm.
of the things we've done.
Mm-hmm.
But we try to make sure that, we really try to make sure that it's not doing anything to deter the brands from wanting involvement or wanting to associate with the pieces that are being created. Whereas I feel like with original IP, there's still boundaries with your IP, your audiences. There's still boundaries with your audiences, and there's still boundaries with things that you want to make sure you're capturing the spirit of the pieces that you're developing. But it ultimately comes down to you have a lot more freedom to explore different things. You get to kind of set how extreme or unextreme or where the focus of things are.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a bit more freeing, but it's also a bit different. I feel like there's different challenges that come along with developing your own stories. You have to figure out your market, you have to figure out the kinds of things you have to make sure that what you're writing is pushing the theme and the narrative of what you're doing forward instead of making it just stay the same. Or depending unless your intention is for it to be something. A lot of sitcoms do that. A lot of serial cartoons do that, where every week they just come back and kind of do their thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then they go home.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, like, going back to about creating like your own IP and like you also delving into content creation and everything. Like, do you want
Mhm.
to like? I guess for anyone who's new here who or wasn't aware that we've interviewed you before, do you want to like introduce yourself a little bit more into like what you like do as like both as just like creating things for yourself, but also like I guess for your career.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Kevin, Kevin Krust. I run a production company called Dead Media Entertainment. We try to bridge the gap between like really high-end professionally released traditional media content and the online spaces. And so we try to, it's very much like the quality standard of old media with the advantages and release strategies of new media. So I do that. I develop and work on a lot of. Right now we're developing 2 or 3 original series that we're going to be trying to release in the next 2 to 3 years. Alongside, for work, I also work with a lot of content creators. I do some of the design and branding stuff for the Trash Taste podcast. I do almost a lot of the video stuff for Cam Steady. I've worked with a number of creators in the Pokemon space and in a lot of and in the trading card spaces, tabletop gaming, and the anime review spaces, just kind of all over the place. I try to help creators get from one place. If they have a foundation, I try to help them get as far as they can go with what they're doing. So, yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, so just like try like rewinding it back a bit. So we do have some viewers in our stream right now. So Mandel, Sab, Irene, we see you. And actually, speaking of Sab, Irene, we do she does there. They do have a question. Do you find it's
Mhm.
easier to develop your own IP or to work within the bounds of existing IP, or is it mostly situational and context dependent?
I think it's context dependent. So for example, with the Danny Phantom cipher, that one it's been very interesting because that process has gone back and forth on how much I want to adhere to the original series because it's been a long time since that show came out.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of debates you have to have both when you're developing original IP and when you're working with existing things. And so I feel like typically when developing, I don't know. I feel like I typically have an easier time developing original work personally, but I also really respect and appreciate the challenges of the adaptation process.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of different uh, things I'm looking at right now that I'm hoping to get to work on adaptations for in some kind of a professional capacity. And so there's a lot of challenges that come along with that and along with developing something that is pulling from an existing intellectual property. versus when you're writing something, you kind of have a little bit more liberty to kind of figure out how you want to fit that work into what you're doing and your brand and your scheme and everything.
Mhm. Yeah, I also feel like it might like I'm not saying it 100% is. It's just more of like from what I've seen. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to like work on an existing IP because it's like you have the Bible already there. Like you have like the world already laid out. So it's kind of like in fan fiction terms, like you have it set there. You just have to try to extrapolate it from there, and
Yeah,
then kind of like
exactly.
bring in a lot of other stuff. Whether if it's cool or not, that's really anyone's opinion. But I like that's also just like thinking about it too. It's like if you're building from the ground up, it's like you're already like trying to connect the dots, as with like existing IPs like Pokemon, Danny Phantom, stuff like that. It's like it's already there. You just have to ask the question of can you do this? Double check the sources, and if you
Yeah.
can, you can. If you can't, well, I'm gonna do it anyway. No, I'm kidding. But
Yeah.
but yeah,
So,
yeah.
no,
Thank you
it's
for that
it's for
question,
sure.
Sab.
Yeah, it's a great question, Sab. Thank you.
Yeah. And like with everything you've done, like with your career and just like doing stuff for yourself, like
Yeah.
did you like get like any education? Like did you go to school for any of this? Like yeah.
So I'm I I have never had a formal education in any kind of media or training or anything of
Mhm.
any kind. I have been sort of trained in the arts. Both of my parents are professionals in live entertainment in theater.
Mhm.
And so I have like a professional background in the arts. I have since I was a kid. I took an interest in film and audio at the age of 6, so that was always like so I've been very, very lucky to be around high level creative professionals my whole life. And so it's been something I've learned a lot from, but I haven't like in a traditional sense, I never went to college.
Mhm.
And I didn't, I haven't gone to film school or audio school of any kind. And so it was one of those things where it was learned from doing and just kind of just as much anything I could absorb from anywhere I could absorb it. I would absorb it. And a lot of self-teaching as well. A lot of just like head down, trying to figure it out. And just like, okay, I want to do this. What's the coolest way to do this? Oh, they did this and this thing. How did they do that? Like
Mhm.
figure it out and like kind of reverse engineer it and do that.
Okay. And so like with everything you've done as well, like do you have like any advice or like anything in terms of like getting your name out there, whether if it's like just like getting work like you do or just like in a social media aspect?
So it completely depends on what you're doing. I think the thing to remember is no matter how oversaturated an industry is, there is always room for people,
Mhm.
and it depends on when. Like I think like a lot of people assume like a lot of people I have this conversation like a lot with people in like the Pokemon sphere where they're like I want to grow and it's like, but I want to do this and this X might be specifically oversaturated, but like what about X? Think about like really critically like what about that makes you want to make that twist it come up with something different that kind of accomplishes the same goal but might be a bit different and you'll find an audience like people I think often forget like there are hundreds of people or millions of people who want to do art or content or just creative work in general professionally. And the thing to remember is the world stops without art. It stops without film, stops without comics, it stops without movies, stops without TV. And whenever there's a lack of art, people lose their minds. There's always an audience. It's just a matter of knowing your audience. Think about the types of people you're trying to like who would enjoy this like if you look at like like the Marvel movies, it's like
Mhm.
the perfect example. Thunderbolts came out in May,
Mhm.
and that movie is is underperformed, and it was very well received. And the reason why is because they did something that attracted the core comic book audience. Here's comic book characters, here's more niche characters from the Marvel world, whatever, but they didn't appeal to the broader audience, the people who only kind of go to the movie theaters to see something because oh, I know this one or oh, whatever. And so you have to know your audience. You have to know where you're putting it and you have to know who you're appealing to with each project. You've got to target things appropriately. And so it's really just about knowing your audience. Think about the things you consume, think about the things that you like to watch. Why do you like those things? Who else likes those things? What else do they like? What about those things overlaps? That type of thing. I think there's a market for everything. It's just a matter of figuring out what your market is and really knowing your audience.
Mhm. And like with everything like you've done creative wise, like who were like the writers, the artists, like anything, like anyone in those fields, like who were like your main influencers and like their work, like that inspires you to continue to do what you do.
I think throughout my creative, I hate saying creative journey because I feel like that term is overused. My creative journey, I need like a beret. My creative journey, ever since I started as an artist, how long ago was that now? No, I think that there's been different people throughout periods of my life. When I was young, I was really inspired by like the Harry Potter movies,
Mm-hmm.
and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man is still to this day like some of my favorite movies. I love those movies. I think Spider-Man 2, I will die on the hill. I think Spider-Man 2 from a screenplay standpoint is a nearly perfect movie. Um, and it's there's so much about like I was very lucky that I got to experience a lot of media like that when I was a kid. And then like when I was older, you know, it was people like David Fincher, Bong Joon-ho, Lee Chang-dong, who's a Korean director who I just absolutely adore. A lot more of the Charlie Kaufman is
Mm-hmm.
a genius, Denis Villeneuve. Um, just a lot of people like that. It's a lot of these like big concept, like larger than life utilizes the medium in really specific, very. I think when you're creating art in general, utilizing the medium that you're doing the art in is so important. Like why is something a movie as opposed to a book, or why is something a comic as opposed to a television show, or as opposed to a whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something like I really gravitate towards a lot of the directors that have done things like that. Raimi's like that, Fincher's like that, Kaufman's like that. So it's a lot of people like that.
Yeah. And like sorry, like just rewinding back to like just finding your audience. So like if you're
Yeah.
speaking for yourself, like who would be like your ideal audience or like your ideal reader, stuff like that.
So for what I try to do, at least for right now, what I try to do on YouTube is there's two sides to the audience I'm trying to capture, or three sides, I guess, to the audiences I'm trying to capture right now. For the Ben 10 cipher, there was a very specific audience. I had an existing following in the nerdcore music community,
Mm-hmm.
and so I wanted to satisfy some of the people that had been a part of that bracket of the world that I've done a lot of work in. And so that's where the cipher formats come from, is that kind of corner of the internet. So the nerdcore audience is always in my mind with the ciphers and with the music stuff for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And then beyond that, I wanted to capture like action cartoon fans, maybe not just Ben 10, like Ben 10 fans for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but also like people who might like superheroes in general, or who like Marvel, or who like DC, or any kind of, or like Invincible, or any of these other shows, and go, oh, I never really watched Ben 10, but like what this looks kind of cool. Like what is this? Like let's check this out. Like maybe this is a good condensed thing I can watch that could kind of like give me a palate, like a taste of like of what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that. And then the third audience is I also just try to attract like people who in kind of like the art design realm. I know that's like a weird, completely like tangential audience, but there's like a weird niche, not weird, but like I mean I'm part of it. But there's a niche of people who will just watch videos because they have really flashy, impressive, or like just eye-drawing visuals that are different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also try to do something visually that's just a little bit different so that I can appeal to like some of the people just who just kind of watch videos for the sake of like watching the video spectacle. Because then, like, when videos start to go viral, the Ben 10 video did really well in a very
Mm-hmm.
short period, and I'm very blessed for that. And so that audience kind of came in a little bit later in the second or third wave of people who found the video, and it was a lot of like, ooh, these cool little like compositing tricks, or these cool little things. So I try to, those are kind of my target audience right now.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to kind of bridge into like very like narrative driven, like people who enjoy kind of those bigger sci-fi fantasy concepts, but enjoy very narrative, like grounded narrative kind of stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. And like we've talked like a lot about like what you do for work and just like your passions and everything. So like outside of everything, like do you have any other hobbies you do like outside of this?
no.
Oh.
um, no, I mean, I'm a big video game person. I mean, that kind of the thing with a lot of what I do is a lot of it bridges on things that I really like that I do for work. Like a lot of the things I enjoy outside of work are things like gaming or reading comic. Like I try to read comics every night before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like one of those things where it's like comic books, just reading in general, like just traditional books and novels.
That's fair.
I'm not a cooking person. But I watch movies as many as I can,
Hmm.
and TV as well. So it's I'm very much like a media consumer. When I'm not making media, I'm watching or trying to consume it. It's very
Yeah,
much like
it never
my
ends.
whole it never ends. It's very much my whole existence.
Okay. Well, let's see. And like and do you have like what was it? Like if people want to follow you on any social medias, like what's the best way?
So you can find me everywhere. My handle is not Kevin Krust. Uh, like it's at NOT Kevin the usual way. Krust Krust.
If someone stole
Uh,
your handle.
no, I stole my handle.
Oh no.
I had it on pretty much everywhere except I didn't have it on Snapchat and I didn't have it on Twitter.
Mhm.
And Twitter is me. Twitter was me. I made the Twitter account and then I got locked out of it like a month later. And so and then I made another one. This was in 2010 and I've never been able to I don't have the email that's attached to the other one, so I've never been able to get back into it.
Oh no.
So there was like a 2 week period where they're like, we're gonna kill inactive accounts, and I was like, yes. And then they were like, we're not doing that anymore. I was like, no.
Oh no.
So
I'm sorry. I will forever just find that funny. It's like, oh, where can we find you? Not Kevin Krust. You're like, huh?
not Kevin Krust. Yeah,
It's like, are you sure? Yeah,
it's
we're sure. Yeah.
it's the first time I've had a consistent handle across all platforms, and it's like it's one of I was so glad that I did it. So it's so easy to find me now.
Yeah.
You
And
can also
then.
just go to kevinkrust.com. That's where you can find my work and
Yeah.
work samples and any kind of freelance contact.
Mhm. Yeah, and like I guess like just to finish it off, like do you have any like projects you're allowed to talk about that you would like to talk about?
Let me think about that. Yeah. So, I mean, I've talked about the Danny Phantom rap cipher. That's been in production for 2 years. We unfortunately lost a year and a half's worth of progress back in October, and so we had to start from scratch. And
Oh
so it's been a
no.
very, very painful process. But things are going well, and it's on track, and it's coming soon. I don't want to give a date until it's done because we've announced a lot of dates
Mhm.
that have not happened due to acts of God. And so but it's full. I say we as if it's not just me locking myself in this room and doing it for 20 hours a day. But it's moving along well. So the Danny Phantom rap cipher is good. There's a bunch of Cam Steady rap ciphers coming up that are very exciting. Keeping an eye on the Cam Steady stuff is
Mhm.
really there's a lot of cool stuff
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah, I think the last time
So
I heard of Cam Study is like apparently they're doing a show. He's doing a show with like Nate in the near future. That's all I
yeah,
heard.
he and Nate wants to battle. The Phantom Revival tour is going on in the fall.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, either way, like, I can't wait to see what you have in the near future. Hopefully, nothing
thank you.
happens to this Danny Phantom file.
Well, we'll see. It's been a process. I just finished building today. There's a desk here that is off camera
Oh.
because the desk that was holding the drawing tablet collapsed. So the
Oh.
universe is trying to stop this video from happening, and I'm not letting it.
Oh no.
So
Well,
yeah.
fingers crossed. Hope it gets done, and please don't die. We, please don't.
I'm going ghost. No, I'm not.
Oh no. Oh
The-
gosh, no. All right. Well,
um,
regardless, anyways, I want to thank you for coming here today on the show. It was
yeah, no
really
problem.
appreciate you having us
Yeah,
here.
always happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And if you guys are watching this on YouTube, hit that like button and maybe subscribe for more content. Maybe you'll see Kevin again in the future. And with
And leave a comment for
yeah,
interactions.
yeah. Oh, that too. Also, leave a comment for going if you're going ghost or something. I don't know how
If
to
you're
say
going
that.
ghost.
Yeah.
If you made it this far, comment, I'm going ghost.
Okay. All right. Well, either way, like I said, thank you for having us. And with that, I am Julia Canon. And you want to introduce yourself again, Kevin?
And I'm Kevin Krust from Dead Media.
All right. And
And
yeah, and you've been
thanks
on
for
the
having me.
yeah, thank you. And you've been on the air with Power Squared. I hope you guys have a nice evening and have a nice day.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.